Today we will continue practicing how to factor algebraic expressions. In the last lesson, we practiced factoring expressions that had just a single variable. Now we will look at expressions with two or more variables. So let's get started. When we factor algebraic expressions, we want to put the tiles into equal groups. In this case, each group will have the same number of x tiles, the same number of y tiles, and the same number of ones tiles. We can line up our tiles to help find the correct grouping. And what we find out is that each group has one x tile, two y tiles, and three ones tiles, and we can create two of those groupings. So we have two groups of the quantity x plus 2y plus 3. Instead of using tiles, let's factor this expression by finding the greatest factor that all three terms in the expression have in common, the greatest common factor. For 2x, we can write its factors as 2 times x. For 4y, well, 4 becomes 2 times 2 times y, and then 6 can be factored as 2 times 3. When we factor each of these terms, we see that there is a 2 they all share. Let's circle these 2. This is the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor in this expression is 2, so we will factor it out and then write out what remains within a set of parentheses. So what remains is an x plus 2y plus 3. So we end up with 2 times the quantity x plus 2y plus 3. We say that these two expressions, 2x plus 4y plus 6, and 2 times the quantity x plus 2y plus 3, are equivalent expressions. They are the same thing, simply written in a different way. To factor these expressions, we want to find the greatest common factor. We can do prime factorization and factor 4 and 12 down to its prime numbers, or we can recognize that 4 is a factor of 12. So we can factor this as 4 times a plus 3 times 4 times b. So they have a 4 in common, and that is all. So we'll factor out that 4, put it on the outside of the parentheses. What stays behind is the a plus 3b. So the answer is 4 times the quantity a plus 3b. When you factor, you should always check your results using the distributive property. So 4 times a is 4a, and 4 times 3b is 12b. And we are back where we started. Next problem, we have 3x minus 9y plus 15. My first step here will be to convert subtraction to addition. So instead of having minus 9y, we'll convert this to plus a negative 9y plus 15. Now we'll factor each of these terms. So we have 3 times x plus, and then I'll factor this as 3 times negative 3 times y plus 3 times 5. Greatest common factor in this case is 3. All three terms have the factor 3, so we'll factor that out, and that leaves us with x plus a negative 3y plus 5. And then we'll convert the addition of a negative to subtraction. So we have 3x minus 3y plus 5. Again, always checking our answer. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 3y is negative 9y. And 3 times 5 is 15. For this third problem, again, we'll start with converting subtraction into addition. So we have negative 14a plus a negative 42b plus a negative 21. And now we'll factor. So we have negative 1 times 2 times 7 times a plus that negative 1, and this will be times 6 times 7 times b. 6 times 7 is 42. And plus, once again, that negative 1 times 3 times 7. So here we're working on those multiples of 7. So each term has a negative 1 in common. That is a common factor. And the 7, that is a common factor. So we'll factor out the negative 1 and the 7. That leaves behind 2a plus 6b plus 3. Then negative 1 times 7, that's negative 7 times 2a plus 6b plus 3. So let's check our answer. So we'll do negative 7 times 2a is negative 14a. And then negative 7 times 6b is negative 42b. And negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. For the next problem, again, our first step will be converting subtraction to addition. So now we have negative x plus a negative 7y. Now we'll factor this. So for negative x, we'll factor this as negative 1 times x plus 7 times negative 1 times y. 7 times negative 1 is negative 7. So a common factor is negative 1. That's our greatest common factor. So we have negative 1. That leaves behind an x plus 7y. It is customary when we have a coefficient of 1, we do not need to show the 1. So we can rewrite this as with just the negative times the quantity x plus 7y. And this means negative 1 times the quantity x plus 7y. And then checking our answers. We're going to multiply negative 1 times x, and that's negative x. And negative 1 times 7y is negative 7y. So negative x minus 7y. For the fifth problem, again, our first step will be converting subtraction to addition. So we have negative 2a plus a negative 8b plus a negative 6c. Now we'll factor. So negative 2a, we can factor that as, let's go ahead and do negative 1 times 2 times a. And then we have plus, and then we'll go ahead and factor out that negative 1. And we'll do 8 as 2 times 4. And then we have times b plus, now we have negative 1 times 2 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6. And then times c. So each of these terms has negative 1 as a factor. So we can factor that out. And then also each of them have 2 as a factor. So we can factor out that 2. And then that leaves us with an a plus 4b plus 3c. And then negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. So negative 2 times the quantity A plus 4B plus 3C is our answer. Then we'll check by multiplying it. We'll distribute this negative 2. So we have negative 2 times A is negative 2A. Negative 2 times 4B is negative 8B. And negative 2 times 3C is negative 6C. And then finally we have 10x minus 5y plus 35z plus 55. So we have 4 terms here, including 3 different variables. So first step will be to convert this subtraction to addition. So we have 10x plus a negative 5y plus 35z plus 55. And now we'll factor these. So 10 is 2 times 5 times x plus, we'll go ahead and do a negative 1 times 5 times y plus 35, well that's 5 times 7 times that z plus 55. 55 is 5 times 11. So each term has a factor of 5. 5 is our greatest common factor, so we'll factor that out. And that leaves with a 2x plus a negative 1 times y plus 7z plus 11. And then we'll convert this plus a negative to subtraction. So we have 5 times 2x minus y, or 1y, plus 7z plus 11. Close that parentheses. And again, checking our results using that distributive property. Multiply 5 to this quantity. We get 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times a negative y is negative 5y. 5 times 7z is 35z. And 5 times 11 will give us 55. Same expression we started with. A great way to learn is to practice on your own. We will discuss in a bit, but go ahead and pause your screen and do these 4 problems. So in the first problem, the common factor is 6. We end up with 6 times the quantity 2a plus b minus 3. For the second problem, first step is to convert that subtraction to addition. And then we find a common factor of negative 4. And we end up with negative 4 times the quantity 3x plus 5y. For this third problem, after factoring each of the terms, the greatest common factor is 3. And that leaves us with 3 times the quantity a plus 2b plus 7c minus 8. And finally, for the fourth problem, we have 13x minus 39y minus 65. In this case, we're working with multiples of 13. So 13 can be factored as 13 times 1. 39 is 3 times 13. And 65 is 5 times 13. 13 is the greatest common factor. We factor that out. And we end up with 13 times the quantity x minus 3y minus 5. Continue practicing factoring algebraic expressions, and I'll see you in the next video.